Hello everyone, and welcome to my channel. I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Story 1. I grew up in a small, dusty town in Utah, the kind of place where the wind doesn't just blow, it bites, it scours. It makes you feel like the desert itself is watching. My uncle used to tell me stories about skinwalkers, and I'd roll my eyes and laugh. Ghost stories were for kids, he'd say. But the older I got, the less I laughed, and the more I started to notice the things people didn't talk about. The things that moved in the corners of your vision when no one else was around. It was late one night when it happened. The kind of night where the sky is so black it feels heavy, pressing down on the earth. I'd been at a friend's house, playing cards and talking nonsense until the sun had long gone and only the stars hung above the desert. I decided to drive home, alone, down the long stretch of highway that cut through nothing but sand, scrub, and the occasional twisted juniper tree. The wind was howling, rattling the truck like it had a mind of its own, shaking the doors and making the mirrors vibrate. I thought I was just tired, that my mind was playing tricks. That's when I saw it, out of the corner of my eye, crouched by a fence that ran along the side of the road. Something was watching. At first, I thought it was a man, maybe a drifter or someone drunk wandering the desert. But there was something wrong about the way it moved. Its head tilted too far, just slightly, but enough to make me shiver. As I drove closer, my stomach dropped. Its face, it wasn't human anymore. The eyes were hollow, deep pits that swallowed the dim light. Its grin stretched too wide, teeth glinting in a way that didn't belong. And then, as I passed, it spoke, not in a growl, not in a scream, but in a voice I knew too well. My mother's voice, soft and gentle, calling my name. AR, Slan. I slammed the brakes. My truck stalled. The engine coughed, died, and left me in silence. The wind suddenly louder, angrier. I couldn't see it in the mirrors, but I could feel it behind me. The smell hit first. Rotting earth, wet fur, something ancient and hungry. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely grip the steering wheel. I tried the truck, the key, anything, but it wouldn't start. And then I heard it breathing, not heavy like a person's, but slow, deliberate, like the desert itself exhaling. My heart pounded so hard I was sure it could be heard from miles away. I wanted to look back, but I was afraid of what I'd see. Finally, with a surge of desperation, I got the truck started. I floored it, swerving down the highway, trying not to hit the cacti that jutted out of the ground like jagged teeth. The truck leapt forward, tires screaming against the asphalt. I dared a glance in the rear view. Nothing. Nothing but empty road, the fence, and the desert stretching into the darkness. My relief lasted a moment. It wasn't gone. Weeks later, I'd be lying in bed, thinking I was safe, and the wind would pick up. I'd hear her voice, soft and distant, calling my name from somewhere far off, but close enough to make my skin crawl. I'd freeze, waiting, listening, knowing that if I followed the sound, I'd find nothing, just sand, rocks, and the feeling that someone, or something, was watching me. Always. I don't know why it picked me that night. Maybe it was the emptiness of the highway, the silence, or maybe it just enjoys the fear in me. I do know one thing. I've never been able to drive that stretch of road at night again without gripping the wheel until my knuckles go white, without my eyes darting to every shadow, every fence post, every tree. Sometimes when the wind rattles the windows and the desert moans, I swear I see it standing at the edge of the highway, crouched, waiting. Its face changes just slightly from human to something else, and it calls my name. And every time I remember my uncle's words, the ones I used to laugh at, the Skinwalkers, Arslan. They're not just stories. They're patient, and they know your name. I don't laugh anymore. I don't drive at night, and I never, ever ignore the wind, because if you do, it will find you. Story 2. I moved to northern Arizona for a seasonal job on a remote cattle ranch. The kind of place where the horizon stretches forever, where the sun scorches the red rocks by day and the wind cuts through your bones at night. The locals were friendly enough, but I noticed a caution in their eyes when I asked about the surrounding canyons. Don't go out after dark, one old rancher said, his voice low, almost a whisper, like he didn't want the canyon itself to hear him. I laughed it off. I'd grown up around the wilderness. I told myself. I knew how to handle the dark. The first night in my little cabin, the kind with creaking floorboards and a smell of old pine, I was restless. I kept the window open a crack because the air was too dry to breathe otherwise. Around midnight, I heard it, whispers soft and guttural, coming from outside. Low, almost human, but wrong in a way I couldn't place. My heartbeat sped up. I pressed my face to the glass and squinted into the blackness of the canyon. At first, I thought it was a trick of the moonlight, or maybe the wind twisting through the rocks. But the shadows were moving, twisting, bending, like smoke caught in a current. My pulse pounded, but something in me, curiosity, stupidity, maybe both, made me grab the flashlight on the bedside table and step outside. The moment I crossed the threshold, everything froze. The shadows didn't flicker or waver. They stopped entirely, like someone had paused a film. Then one of them changed. It elongated, stretching taller, and then folded into something more solid. A man, perfectly still, standing in the moonlight. His head tilted at a weird angle, like a doll someone had carelessly propped against the wall. I couldn't move. My tongue felt glued to the roof of my mouth. Then it started toward me. Not walking, not running, it glided. Smooth, silent, deliberate. Wrong. I never seen anyone move like that. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs betrayed me at first. My flashlight beam wavered, shaking in my hands, casting its warped shadow across the canyon wall. And yet, it didn't follow the light, it followed me. I finally turned and sprinted back to the cabin, slamming the door and locking it behind me. My breaths came in short, ragged gasps. My hands trembled as I leaned against the wood, listening. And then I heard it, scratching, soft, deliberate, on the walls, on the roof, like fingernails dragging over the outside. And then the whispering returned. Only this time, it wasn't just any whisper. It was my voice, my exact voice, repeating words I had never spoken aloud, phrases I hadn't even thought of. The words twisted into a mocking rhythm, echoing in the dark corners of my mind, seeping through the walls, through the floor, even through my skull. I didn't sleep. I didn't dare. I sat in the corner, clutching a knife I wasn't sure would help, listening to my own voice laugh, taunt, and plead back at me. I kept the lights on, every single one of them, until dawn burned across the canyon. Then silence fell. By morning, the shadows were gone. The whispers, the scraping, they had vanished as though they were never there. But I couldn't convince myself that they had. Every evening since, when the wind picks up and rattles the cabin, I swear I hear them again. Low murmurs in the darkness, shadows moving just beyond my vision. And sometimes, just sometimes, I hear my own voice calling from the blackness of the canyon, promising that if I step outside, it'll be waiting for me. I never stay outside after dark anymore, not even for a second. But the canyon is patient. It waits. And I know, one day, it will speak my name again. Story 3. When I was 10, my family had a dog named Rusty. He was a scrappy little mutt, part shepherd, part God knows what. But he was ours. Loyal, loud, always underfoot, always nosing into trouble. One summer, we went to my grandfather's cabin in New Mexico. The cabin sat on the edge of a dry canyon, surrounded by thorny brush and ancient pinyon trees. No neighbors for miles. Perfect for a kid who liked to explore, but also perfect for things you didn't want to meet in the dark. I remember the first night vividly. The cabin smelled of cedar and mothballs, and the desert wind rattled the old windows like it was warning us. Rusty slept at the foot of my bed, twitching occasionally in his dreams, little growls escaping him. I must have dozed off, because the next thing I knew, I was awake. Not just awake, terrified awake. Rusty was barking, but not just his usual bark. It was frantic, almost human in its panic. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. The moonlight spilled across the room, casting long shadows. I listened, barking again, from outside, in the woods. I grabbed my flashlight from the bedside table. My parents were snoring, and I knew I'd have to check. The night air hit me like a wall when I opened the door, dry, cold, scented with sagebrush. Rusty bolted ahead, hackles raised, teeth bared. He stopped at the edge of the clearing, ears perked, tail stiff. I swung the flashlight and froze. There was a dog that wasn't Rusty. Its fur was mottled brown and black, ragged like it hadn't seen a brush in years. But its eyes, God, its eyes. They were too big, too bright, too knowing. They weren't afraid. They weren't curious. They were calculating. The dog stood on its hind legs for a split second, like some nightmare puppeteer pulling it upright, then lunged, not at me, but toward Rusty's bark echoing in the canyon. I swear it grinned. Its mouth stretched in a way no dog's mouth should. And then it barked. Rusty's bark. Same pitch, same tone, but hollow, like the sound was coming from inside a cave. My stomach turned to ice. I ran, straight back to the cabin, slammed the door and bolted it. That's when the scratching started. Soft at first, barely audible, like claws on the wooden siding. Then louder, more insistent, circling the cabin like some predator was testing its limits. Rusty whined behind me, but it sounded off, deeper, slower. Not my dog. I crept to the window, heart hammering. The dog, or whatever it was, stood just outside. It tilted its head like Rusty always did when he didn't understand something. It mimicked him perfectly, every twitch, every movement, every expression. But it wasn't Rusty. Its eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight, cruel, intelligent, almost human in their malice. I thought it would leave. I thought Dawn would chase it away. But night after night, I heard Rusty's bark, echoing from the woods, echoing from corners where shadows pooled too deep, echoing from places that didn't make sense. I began sleeping with the door locked, flashlight clutched like a weapon. On the third night, I couldn't take it. I ran outside again, just to see if it would show itself in the light. It did, waiting, patient. And this time I saw the change. Its body twisted for just a fraction of a second, elongating, shifting, almost like it wasn't solid. Its head jerked in ways Rusty never could, and then it bared its teeth, more human than canine, and spoke in a voice that was almost a whisper, almost my father's, almost mine. Go inside. I didn't hesitate. I ran. I locked the door, pressed my back against it, trembling until sunrise. When the sun finally bled over the canyon, I ran to check on Rusty. He was in the barn, tied up, safe, wagging his tail like nothing had happened. But something had happened. The air smelled wrong. The earth felt wrong. And deep down, I knew it wasn't gone. Years later, I moved away. I told myself it was a dream, a child's fear amplified by the desert wind. But every now and then, when I'm alone, I hear it. Rusty's bark, faint, hollow, echoing. Sometimes in the backyard, sometimes in the hallway. And I know, without a doubt, that it's not Rusty. Not my Rusty. Something followed him. Something learned him. And it's waiting.